of the University of Ghana from the perspective of students, and maybe you can help by looking at it: physical facilities, teaching facilities, and other resources such as library, internet access, etc. Well, let's start. Well, we'll start.
Sure. The University of Ghana is our premier tertiary institution, and from the students' perspective, there's much left to be desired for the tertiary institution. A lot of students come out of secondary schools, and when they enter into the university, they expect some minimum standards that doesn't necessarily always obtain. Students have the opportunity to study 7 different faculties or schools, and to my mind, tertiary education should be the dream or an aspiration for the student, for any Guyanese. It should be an aspiration for young Guyanese. But Chris, in all honesty, sometimes you can interpret our tertiary institution as desperation for some of our students. There is need for a lot of improvement to the physical facilities. However, a lot of work is being done currently at the campus. We have the World Bank project that is refurbishing our 4 faculties: the Faculty of Agriculture, Technology, Natural Sciences, and Cs. But then beyond the physical facilities, beyond the classrooms, I think the fundamental concern of the student body is the services that the university provides and the quality of the services they provide. Fundamentally, there is an absence of student involvement in critical decision making, and there is sometimes an absence of fundamental respect for students. And so that to me underscores the major concerns of the student body at the University of Ghana.
I wonder, Ms. Karim, if you could tell us your perspective, the physical facilities, that the classrooms, the social rooms, the social amenities.
Well,
the
personally,
labs.
as a medical student, I'll speak on that behalf. There's much to be desired for classrooms, laboratories, teaching equipment, and so on. Personally, as it relates to our accreditation too, one of the things that CAM HP wanted to see was more physical resources, was a building for medical students, better labs, better classrooms. And that's one of the things they're working on right now, better washroom facilities, more lighting, and so on. So one of the things that is really important to me is that we need to develop our infrastructure for students. We just don't want classrooms to just get thrown in. It needs to be better, more student friendly, more fans, better chairs. Yes, they had improved on the fact that we didn't have enough chairs, but now the chairs are falling to pieces. We're grateful for all their efforts, but we still need some more stuff. More need is desired.
Sir?
Well, I could only endorse what has been said by my 2 colleagues. My greatest...
You study in a different department, different
Yes.
faculty, is that correct?
social
Okay.
sciences.
Mhm.
My greatest issue essentially would rest in the service that is given to students. Every day I'm inundated with complaints about slothfulness in the manner in which things are handled. And endorsing what the President has said, student involvement in critical decision making. We have an incident where we had new furniture delivered that only catered for right-handed students, not left-handed students. I mean, a basic consultation with students who were actually
Basic
in the
common
classroom.
sense.
I'll put it as consultation with students in classrooms.
You could talk plainly in this program.
Yes, would have informed you that there's a population of left-handed students.
Now, you're university students. You understand the whole concept of human rights. Do you think, in terms of the physical facilities, they meet the standards required, that you could say my human rights, my human values are met by the physical conditions at the University of Ghana?
As plain as no. No, Chris, no. And in fact, you talk about human rights, and tomorrow is the International Human Rights Day, December 10th. The university has taken within view of the need for improved facilities and moved to increase the tuition of the student body through a facilities fee. Now, the facility fee was intended to address the unacceptable and deplorable facilities that present at the campus. It is sad to note, however, though, Chris, that throughout the entire academic year, the mechanism in place to manage that fund was not properly operational. So there was supposed to be a committee.
But do you accept some responsibility there? Here it is. The UGSS's principal responsibility is to protect and advocate for the interests of the student body.
Correct.
Money has been taken from them, according to you.
Yes.
Well, we know it as a matter of fact
Yes. Yes.
that it's been taken. They have not got what they paid for. What are you doing about it? And what is UGSS doing about it?
A couple of things. We must take responsibility. I mean, we represent the interests of students. And in fact, it was the pressure by the society through frequent letters and then subsequent press releases that caused the committee to spend the facility fees to meet, albeit it was fundamentally a waste of time. There's currently a petition that I believe to date has more than 2,000 signatures, which calls on the administration to accept responsibility for the misuse or the non-usage or the less than acceptable use of the facility fees, and calls on the administration to on one part, negotiate with the student body to have no less than $15,000 of that $50,000 reimbursed to the students, and then secondly, calling for the facility fee to be reduced from $50,000 to $30,000 Ghana dollars. So we've got students involved in this process. Students have been very responsive. I mean, it's amazing the feedback, especially when it comes to money, Chris. You say to students, look, all right, pay more money, we're going to improve facilities. And then, as a matter of fact, a lot of the facilities have gotten worse.
Yes.
And so it's unacceptable.
They have not met basic. My question was, do they meet your basic standards
Not
that
the
you could say
basic.
your human rights?
No,
No,
they don't.
Now, you talked about teaching facilities. What about the quality of teaching? And I'm a lecturer there, so
Yes.
feel free to criticize.
This will be
None
a
of you is
ticklish
in law,
one.
but sorry?
Fundamentally, we have too many lecturers that do not have master's degree or PhDs. We have a lot of first degree lecturers.
Teaching first degree programs.
Yes,
Yeah.
teaching first degree programs. So you register a class next year, you might see somebody just graduated as your lecturer in the new academic year. And there are a couple of issues where that is concerned. I mean, attracting lecturers with higher qualification comes at a cost. You need to pay
Yes.
pay them well. I don't think you're paid well enough, but you still teach. So we appreciate that. But notwithstanding the qualification of our lecturers, the fundamental respect in the classroom, the fundamental accountability to the students with regards to assignments, assessments, grades, the use of technology. Sadly enough, Chris, there's some classrooms that still revert to writing on paper and refuse to use the internet, refuse to use advanced technology. And so it strains the young student who, after they will have qualified themselves at the University of Ghana, go into a work environment that demands of them the use of technology, but then they were not taught in like manner. And so that's a whole different discussion on the quality of service.
But if I could just add something here. What I find most interesting at the university with our lecturers is that I find that we don't inculcate this spirit or this critical thinking ability. It's more of focus on the textbook says this, and we just follow that. For me, in 2015, as a developing nation, competing with other countries, we need to start thinking outside of the box and inspiring our children, inspiring our young scholars to find another way to this solution. And for me, I find personally it affects the quality of teaching that happens at the university, because the minute you go and say something that is contrary to what maybe has been established, you're deemed as a troublemaker. That's a tag that I've been given so many times for just having a different perspective.
Well, if you're a student leader and you're not described as a troublemaker,
you're not doing your job.
You really are not doing your job. I always say, one of the things, and I'm saying this on television now, the only time I've ever been arrested was in England as a student leader. You're expected to do that. And we had the same problems at Southwest London. You had to leave in winter, and you have the building, and the washrooms are outside. So you have those problems. So we're probably talking about the same consequence, because if they just came out of first degree,
Yes.
learned one way,
Correct.
and it's one of the paradoxes of teaching. If you're teaching kindergarten or primary, you need to get great teacher training. But apparently when you're teaching at university level, you don't need any training. And I never can understand that. You tell us what you think about the resources.
The teaching resources. Personally, this is where we will differ, because my lecturers, majority of them, will have second degrees. Because most of my lecturers, if they're teaching me surgery, they have a diploma in surgery, a master's in surgery. They're teaching me internal medicine, they have a master's in IM. So when it comes to courses, most of my lecturers would have second degrees. The problem now comes when they don't have teaching training. And part of our curriculum review to be accredited was that the lecturers need to be trained. And with the new curriculum review, there are some programs now in connection with some foreign universities where they actually do weekly training of some of our lecturers, like teaching the residents how to teach, because knowing is one thing, but teaching is a whole other thing.
Well, you're painting a fairly, certainly a comparatively better picture from your colleagues. How come the medical program at the University of Ghana has been de-recognized?
How come? Well, the issue lies...
With all that great teaching and...
Not just the teaching, because that wasn't the only issue affecting the medical school. We needed curriculum review, and as I mentioned, is as a part of the curriculum review, now lecturers are being taught to learn how to teach students. So that was one issue. Then there was an MOU, because they needed a memorandum of understanding between the Ministry of Health, UG, and GPHC. And now that has been signed. They also needed
But
a building.
the de-recognition is still in place.
This de-recognized because when you lose your accreditation, how CAMHP works is that they meet once every year in July. So when they met in July this year, UG didn't send forward any progress report, so we lost accreditation. To gain accreditation now, we have to send in a report showing our self-study, how far we meet, and then they'll go through it. Then they'll visit Guyana. They have to visit all the sites that we got taught at, and then at July they'll decide if what we give them, if what they saw is up to standard, and then we'll get back accreditation.
Now, how you would ask yourself, how come? Where did we mess up to lose that accreditation? Was it a problem of administration? Was it the department or central administration? Where did the problem lie?
I don't think it's just one spot the problem lies at, because to maintain accreditation, you need resources, you need money, you need government input, because we need a new building. You need resources for that. You also need more persons specializing to focus on just this accreditation, not just the lectures.
Well, you're
alone.
suggesting that we're really not ready to teach that program then?
No, we're there, because actually we're making progress. We just needed a little push. And
No, but you've identified a number of problems, all forms of resources.
all forms of resources, and so far we've met a few times with the Minister of Health, Dr. Norton, and the issue with the building, we have a plan now, we're supposed to have funding to do it. The curriculum review, it's on the process right now. The MOU has been signed. So probably all these problems were just big problems, you just needed to focus in on them.
Tell me something, and I'm sure the viewers would be interested in this. How many students are being taught per academic year in the medical program?
Average of 40.
Is it economic for the University of Ghana to run that medical program with only a student population in the medical field of 40?
No, it's 40 per year, so we're
Yes,
around.
40.
Yeah, so We have a certain
you're turning out
population.
40 per year, so that's what it means. Every year, it's costing you this to produce 40,
I
to graduate 40 persons.
I think it's very economical because personally we don't have to pay much for it, and we have the resources
I am
right
talking
here.
about the state. I'm talking about taxpayers. I'm not talking about you pay.
Well, we have the resources right here to do it, and it's very important that a university could produce medical doctors for our local society, our own trained. That's supposed to be assets. We're assets to Ghana, so I don't think how economical it is to train us. It's not that
But
much.
you accept that university, none of you does economics, is that correct?
I did economics.
You did
Not
economics.
We did
It's a matter of economics. In the final analysis, you have to have your resources, and your output's got to somehow measure up with your input. Now,
So,
while I
what
would
are
agree
you
it's about economics, I think like our former VC would have brought a sort of a different appreciation into the economic running of University of Ghana. Because, like as you would have said, it would be apparent that the taxpayers should be the ones who are bearing the brunt. But I wouldn't necessarily agree with that. Because, for example, in the medical field, I'm sure that there are partners that are able to offset some of these expenses. So it doesn't become a case whereas the university is essentially a burden on the taxpayers, but there's a relationship with
you
both
say,
private
you
and
say
public.
there are partners, but the young lady has said, look, we've got serious shortage of resources used in the department, in the medical facility.
Well, these same
Now-
shortages are being resolved.
yes
Now,
by
the,
the,
the
private
point
sector.
is this. The point is this. Would it make, in your view, make better sense that perhaps we coordinate our teaching at that level within the framework of the University of the West Indies?
I think before we can even think about that, we must first understand the reason why University of Ghana is not a part of the University of West Indies.
Yes, tell me.
Before we can start looking at
Well, tell me,
coordinating
tell me,
the University of West Indies, I personally feel very prideful in my university, and the fact is the University of Guyana. I am prideful about that, and I'll be very much hesitant before looking towards integrating with the university. While it might be something that we should look at, but in my state, I don't necessarily agree with it just outwardly, just for the sake of
You know,
coordination.
you're saying that. You're saying that. Guyana is one of the, in terms of per capita GDP, one of the worst performing economies and countries in the region. In other words, we can least afford it. You have Jamaica, you have Trinidad, you have Barbados, you have the OECS states,
Yes.
and they're not carried away by this pride, and they're very proud of the University of the West Indies.
Yes.
So what's the special thing that we would feel somehow superior because we have University of Ghana? And I'm not saying get rid of University of
No.
Ghana. I'm saying rationalize it. So you make your programs. In some cases, you bring students in agriculture, for example. I would have thought that we would
Well,
have a
exchanges.
comparative advantage in agriculture.
Yes.
Probably in geological studies,
Yeah.
in forestry. So why don't we use? You're the economist, not I'm not.
But Chris,
Why don't we use that kind of thinking?
you must note, however, that many students from these Caribbean countries, they rush to get to Guyana to be a part of our medical program because notwithstanding all of the constraints, we managed to produce some of the best medical students
At a
with
cheaper
these
cost.
limited resources at a way cheaper cost.
Yes.
All right. I love and respect our national university. I do believe that it is a symbol of nationhood and therefore it needs to be representative of the standard we want.
Come on, you're telling me about a symbol of nationhood.
Mhm.
90% of you youths, when you finish studying, they pull out,
Yes.
migrate.
Are you going to tell me that they're leaving because of the University of Guyana? Is that
No,
the
no, I'm
reason?
asking you. You're so proud of your country. You're so
Yeah.
proud that your university has the label Guyana. Why then? Are you just using taxpayers to fund your studies and then I'm all right, I gone?
No, definitely not.
Why,
Chris.
why do you have that situation, you think?
They're not supporting mechanisms outside of the University of Guyana. I don't think the
Employment.
problem rests on the University of Guyana. I think when you would have completed your studies, the next question is where to. I think we haven't done an analysis of our University of Guyana, our program, to meet our national need.
It's the other way around, my friend. It's the University of Ghana that has to do the study of the national need. You're the academics. You're the brains.
Yeah, I agree with you.
It's not the
so the
country must
university
think,
therefore
must
must
study the
produce
university.
persons for the development of the nation. Yes. We're not doing that. We're just doing historical programs that have been there ever since 19 when we would have
Let's
established.
go back to the issue of resources. Funding. Do you believe the University of Ghana is underfunded?
Yes.
And if so, by what kind of percentage?
Won't be able to give a reason,
Yeah,
but it is
yes.
underfunded.
Do you need, okay, forget the percent. Do you need to double it? Do you need to triple it? Do you need to put an equal amount, a further equal amount? That's what I'm getting at.
I would want
To
to.
try to get the scale of the underfunding. You're
Yeah.
saying it's underfunded.
Yeah.
What is the scale of underfunding?
I would say that we need 3 times the amount of funding we have now.
Yeah, I think if I remember correctly, once I did speak to the financial officers at the University of Ghana, and they did indicate somewhere about 2 times to 3 times the amount of income would do us well. I even believe the former vice chancellor spoke to that effect.
The income of the university.
Yeah.
Now, who are the principal beneficiaries of the university?
The students, they benefit. They have
Now,
a degree.
why shouldn't the students
The-
pay more for their education?
Because the students alone do not benefit, Chris.
No, but we said 90% of them leave the country. That's what the studies have shown over the years.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not so sure, and I want to be very cautious. I don't know when last that number was looked at, because, and this is the fault of the University of Ghana, it does nothing to help the society. You hardly have publications out of the University of Ghana.
That's why it's
You hardly have
important.
columnists in the university. You know, you go to Jamaica, you go to Trinidad, and the persons in the faculty,
Are producing.
they're the big columnists. They write all the time. You don't have a Clive Thomas there anymore. So it's almost, you don't have that intellectual virility. Sorry, it's a sexist word, but I can find a better word. So what's wrong with the university that it doesn't see its role, it doesn't play its role in the society?
You're isolating the university out of a grand.
What are we
scheme of
talking about the
things.
university?
There are a couple of things, Chris. One, let me try and list them. One, at the university, there's been historically bad management. All right? And so management is very important to improve our management of the resources we have. Secondly, where are we going? What's the vision for the university? There is an absence of
Vision for the nation.
of a strategic plan on the way forward for the next 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. And so that fundamentally, those two things are two of the main causes for this dire situation. However, you must also note that the students must take a lot of responsibility for some of the prevailing situations or conditions at the university.
Including paying for the additional costs that are required.
Chris, you know, there's
Before
Don't
the
hold on.
don't interrupt him.
yeah, you know, education is supposed to be free from
nursery to tertiary.
tertiary. Education is a right, not a privilege. And we're not saying that students must not have to pay some amount.
Let's not mislead the public into this.
Into what?
It's one of the bases, to tertiary, but not when you get into the fundamental right. It's when you get into the meat of the Constitution. It's not. There's no guarantee of tertiary education. And as you know, I think you're planning to go into law, no? The whole idea is even things like health care, which might be guaranteed under the Constitution, is always has to no right is absolute. In other words, it depends on what
Yes.
resources
Correct.
exist. So
But you
if
know-
we're saying that resources are the problem, I think at the University of Ghana, someone doing in the Faculty of Social Science, was the fee per year?
210,000.
Is that good enough to pay your lecturers and to provide you with the physical and other resources?
So are you saying that the student alone must be the one bearing the burden of providing the lecturer a salary, providing institution with its necessary teaching equipment?
Did I
Well-
say that?
I'm asking. Are you saying?
I didn't say that.
You say if
we know,
$210,000 is enough to pay lecturers. So I'm
Yes,
asking
but
you-
The university has to consider the economic environment of the nation, of Guyana. And you know, so many universities around the world are moving to free education. And some universities, I was in Malta recently, and some universities actually, additional to having free education, tertiary education, they also give the students a stipend. I'm not saying we can afford that just yet, but if we really appreciate and want to invest in the future of our nation, then we must take seriously
now
how we treat the tertiary education.
we know the taxpayers of this country fund the university to the tune of 1.5 billion or something to that effect between Turkine and Tain.
Okay.
Do you believe if the government or taxpayers, because the government doesn't fund it, it's taxpayers who do, were to fund additional costs, that there is a case for the graduates to pay back to society in the form of staying in the country, giving back time to the government or some other form? What would you suggest?
There is that mechanism in place through the PSM. The Public Service Ministry, they offer scholarships and you have to work back a certain number of years.
Scholarships were
To University of Guyana. All right, you have to work back a certain number of years. I think if you do a 4-year program, I think you have to work back at minimum 5 years or something like that. So there is that mechanism in place, albeit I'm not sure what number of students actually access it, but it's one approach in
but
this.
we know, so that's useful. But we know that, and as we just heard, the society pays part of it. So if a person is not, so there's a cost being met by the taxpayer anyway.
Yeah.
Whether it's through a PSM scholarship or the subsidized part. What mechanism you would recommend for that? You know, in the old days we had national service.
Before we can determine, for me, right? Before we can determine that, I would say that we reassess the direction in which we're going as a nation. For me, if we're going to want to essentially curtail the movements of a student, and the programs that are available must be ones that fuel into a national developmental strategy, then we can start talking about that.
So we continue paying these increased fees without any payback to society.
But I want to say that there isn't a payback to society. There is a payback to society.
No, there's
But
no,
then if a
there's
student-
no commitment.
If a student who takes $210,000 and decides to study international relations, for example, and there is no opportunity for that student to be employed, what is that student to do?
Should the university be running programs that
That's what I'm
the society
saying.
does? No. Well, that's the point. I started with that. Should we be running those programs that our society can, at the stage of our society, we don't really need? Should we cut back? I mean, I've heard arguments that, look, we have too many faculties at the University of Ghana, and we need that economic rationalization. If that took place, the economic rationalization, and they were to say, okay, we're cutting out programs, what would be the student body's reaction
Well,
to such a decision?
but you won't just go and say you're
Yeah.
cutting programs.
No.
Must be justified.
We said that.
Mhm.
We said that.
Yeah.
You carry out this examination.
Yeah.
You carry out both internally, externally.
Yes.
You say that, look, we cannot absorb these. What should be done? And the university says, look, we're going to cut that program.
And once it's justified, I believe the student body is a rational group of young people, and we'd understand that. And in fact, that would benefit us more as students if the programs that we're going to be studying are likely to benefit us outside the university.
In
I
the
think
interest
that's a
of
wise
national
move.
development.
That's a wise move. No student wants to study for 4 years, go through all the terrors and the harsh
winter
studying, and then come out only to find out they can't be employed. It's of no use. All right?
Let me ask you this. We often hear, because education really starts at kindergarten,
Yeah.
Do you believe the input into the University of Guyana is of a tertiary level quality? Ability to speak, ability to reason, ability to write.
I would say no. No.
Chris,
It
I
isn't.
can give you some
I would say
personal examples. I mean, I'm the student president, so sometimes I receive written complaints, and you find that the subject and the verb they're at war, and that kind of stuff. In few cases, and then also in other cases, you find that the writings are so extravagant and so beautiful that you wonder, wow, this person should be in the media. We should employ them in some of the media houses. So fundamentally, our education system is not where it needs to, not where it should be.
So the education system, meaning right from
The
kindergarten.
From
level.
kindergarten, we know that. That's known publicly.
given.
So if we're talking about any kind of education sector review, it can't be limited to the University.
It
of Guyana.
cannot.
it can't.
It cannot. It cannot. And it must not, because you need to start from the impressionable stage. The
Those formative years when you're now understanding what is going on around you.
definitely
You
we
must
had
start
we
there.
had great standards in the education system.
Yes.
In the early, not so recent, not so distant past. I don't know what happened during that period of probably 10, 15
I
years.
would say 23, but
20. This is tough.
I didn't want to interview. I would ask you which period you're talking about. Because the decline has been there. I mean,
there.
it is,
It's
it is
clear
sad,
that-
and I think sometimes, you people get a bad rap. Because people tell you, I'm not employing anybody from the University of Guyana. You still hear that kind of backward thinking.
You do. And also on the matter of the education reform, we need to look at, again, where we want to go as a nation 10 years from now. We need to be rewarding our teachers better. We need classrooms that are that are comfortable and quality. And so it's not, again, it's not
The
just
question
at
is,
university
where is
level.
this money going to come from?
where's the money to do what? The curriculum review?
No, not the curriculum
What?
review. To finance what Joshua is talking about.
You know,
The classrooms and the teachers and the facilities. Those things cost. They're
they
very
cost. They
expensive.
cost, and we must appreciate that they're very important. And so, as a starter, educational priorities should be foremost on the agenda of the government.
Should the would the student body support increased fees for better facilities and teaching?
Not again, Chris. We,
No.
the student body, understood during the last tuition increase that yes, the university needs improved facilities. Yes, the cost of tertiary education is fairly cheap, and so we did this before. We said, you know, we didn't carry out a big backlash initially about this entire fee structure and tuition increase, but then the issue, Chris, was that even after the students sort of made sacrifices to pay for these increased resources, things got worse. Things got out of hand, and so the issue here is not money, Chris. It is not money. Money is
To fix the classroom problems. Is not money.
money is a part of the issue.
To fix the drainage problems at the University of Guyana is not a problem.
Yeah, money answers all
But
things.
since
No,
you've
no,
increased the fees, has it been solved?
Well, I'm going to ask you this question: how would you describe the UGSS? You've been there a few years.
Yeah.
Your colleagues have been there for less. Would you say you're vibrant? Would you say you're militant? Would you say you're effective?
Militant is a serious word.
I would say that we inherited a society.
Stop blaming the people of the
No, no,
past.
no. The fact remains. I am here now. We have inherited a society that has done a lot for students, but can do a lot more. And during our tenure, we have worked assiduously to improve our militancy and our representation. But we are still not where we need to be, Chris. We as a society always or have taken responsibility for the poor governance or the less than effective student governance, and we're working to address that. That is a process, and we take responsibility all the time for the poor communication and the inefficiencies that obtain. But that does not stop us from working overtime to ensure we do not leave the UGSS the same way we met it.
Well, the question is this, really, and you're being very honest. You didn't quite answer the question, vibrant or militant.
I said militant.
You're militant. Did
We
you
have
sup-
bouts of militancy.
Bouts.
Most of militancy. I like
Yeah,
that.
bouts.
I like that.
You
I
know,
like that.
I rose out of my slumber and I became militant.
Yes.
The fact is this: do you have within the student body the resources to be genuinely militant, genuinely active?
No, Chris, and that rests on a couple of fundamental issues. One being our 42-year-old constitution. Our constitution has not been reformed for 42 years, and so it is not up to date with effective governance. And so that's just one issue. Continuity in
So
the
whose
society.
fault is that?
That would have been the student society's fault. That's for not reforming it. But this executive has made active steps towards reforming the constitution, and so is likely to be reformed very soon. But separate and apart from that, continuity, Chris. When we went into office, absence of records, nobody said how to do what. So you had to learn as you go, and that shouldn't be.
Yeah.
You should have, and we prepare to stop that, because when the next body comes in, we're ready to train, we're ready to advise, so that they're well prepared to take the society forward.
Isn't that because part of the legacy of this is my slate and that is your slate, and who win and who lose go out?
Definitely, and we need to stop that.
Exactly. But why do you perpetuate that then?
We don't. We haven't.
We've begun the process of solving and healing that.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely.
The constitutional
let
change
me ask
and
you
the
this.
making of the availability of the current executive to train.
And again, I think of my days a long time in the UK, a long time ago. When I was president of the student union, I was technically on leave, and I was paid a salary to do the work.
Nice day.
So apart from the president being a full-time advocate for students, we also had a sabbatical officer, again paid by the Inner London Education Authority. Do you have any full-time staff not in who has to run in and out of a classroom?
No, sadly
That's
no.
in the
However, the constitutional reform calls for an office manager. In fact, historically, the council did approve, as I know it, an office assistant, but it did not materialize. So there's always been effort, there's always been talk, there's always been start-ups. But
The finishing.
the finishing, the actuality has not been there, and so that's where we come into place. Because
finish it.
when we ran for office, we spoke of less talk and more action. And we've been a very action-packed society, but there's still more to be done. We're not saying we're a perfect society, but we're not where we used to be, even though we're not where we want to be.
Did the students support the lecturers' strike at the university?
The society stood in solidarity with the lecturers for improved conditions.
Did they support the strike?
Society students solidarity with the lecturers for improved.
No, that's not my question. Did you say we too are boycotting classes, even if a lecturer decided he was
No.
breaking the strike?
We didn't say that.
You
We
did
didn't
not.
say that. What happened?
Isn't that
as
what a militant society should do?
That's one possible approach, Chris. But what
Well,
happened?
you said lecturers are badly underpaid.
They are. And so that's why we stood in solidarity with them, because we know that if we have improved remuneration for our lecturers, we can have improved quality. We should have quality education in the classroom. But further to that, Chris, at that point in time, the society, we rose up when it came to the facilities. We had our UG revolution at that time. That's where the whole blocking of the gates and all that came into play, because, again, you ask to increase tuition, you fail to even meet, you fail to even consult with students, and so you can't expect us to just take that and go home and be peaceful about it. Further to that, the fact that lectures were having industrial action meant that many students did not have classes, and so part of the revolution called for the resumption of all classes,
Not some classes, but
all classes for students, and so that was one of the bouts of militancy, Chris.
Why as a general player in society, the student movement is regarded as peripheral, on the side, not a key player, not a key driver?
I think it's generally because of the demographic or the age of the student movement. I think we're considered members of the periphery, and this just transcends
What you
more than
mean?
just
Now we're talking about
university.
youth. Now we're going into youth. Now we're going into the respect and inclusion of young people
in the
decision-making process.
at the university.
You know, Chris, I mean, subsequent to all the issues of continuity and lack of proper management of the society and all these things, there is a general undertone, there's a general condescending tone when it comes to young people airing their views and being taken seriously in decision making. This is not just at the university level. This is beyond university level. And so I think it's the revolution is all about the change in the mindset.
You find that attitude of benign neglect towards the students at UG an ill of the administration?
It is.
Would you say the same thing about the Council of the University of Ghana?
I would, but I won't just say it like that. I would go on to explain. But fundamentally what I think about the council.
If you answer the question, there's no need to explain.
No, yeah, there's. Sometimes
Explanation.
you get extra marks in explanation. But I would say about the council that I get the sense that they're far removed from what actually obtains at UG. They're like a group of qualified people who are up there, and then there's UG, the staff, the students, and the issues.
Is it perhaps that you're not involving them? You're saying they're not involving you. Is it that you're not involving them? Have you ever said to them, would you please come and take a walk through with us? Have you ever done that?
They won't be able to do it, but the representative to the council would have to have done it. And
First thing.
No, why can't
It's the
why
first
can't the council do it?
No,
Why
the
can't
council
the
It's
can
a
do it.
rep, though.
The person with the
One
students rep,
student.
yeah.
The student rep to the council would have to communicate that.
What I'm saying, why can't why can't your student society write and say, look, we're inviting you to do a walkthrough. We're inviting you to an open day. Come in and join our class. Sit in our
Because-
classroom and see that you don't have left side desk and right side desk. You don't have washrooms that are fit for human use.
Chris, I want to say that has been discussed and proposed, but we took the alternative route of presenting it to them first.
Did they
at
listen?
the- They listened.
Did they do anything?
They have not done anything as yet. That's plain talk. That's plain
Good,
talk.
that's good. That's good. That's good right there.
That's plain talk.
Tell me something. Where does fixing the University of Guyana begin? Miss, you've been silent for a moment.
I think perhaps we need to start at the administration because I think one of the biggest issues we have is a management problem. As we were talking about, last year they raised the facilities fee. But the person who was supposed to manage the facilities fee didn't come together. They didn't use the money.
Who are the persons?
Is it the Facility Fee Learning Resource Committee? It's a committee that has one
So
student.
why
rep.
did you all allow that?
We didn't.
We've been-
We didn't allow it. In fact, the only
But
time
it
was
has
called-
happened.
It has happened.
So what did you do about it?
Like I said before, when we saw that it wasn't happening, they weren't calling the committee. There was the whole revolution. Then there was the public outcry, and then they called the committee. Right, so it happened, but we weren't satisfied with what took place, and so now we gathered the students again, and we're ready for round 2, I should say.
Is that wrestling or boxing?
Wrestling.
You sure?
Wrestling.
Wrestling?
No, we're
Yes.
talking about what
is more-
Zainab said was that let's fix administration. But is that your primary problem at the University of Guyana?
We have a management problem because if
But you have a resource problem as well.
we have
Managers
a
are not.
resource problem, but we raised the fees and we still wasn't able to manage the fees. We didn't do anything with it.
Manage
Chris.
scarce resources.
Chris, a couple of things, but I think fundamentally, I as a student president, I'm concerned with students, and I know we have a major part to play in the development and improvement of our university. So I'm going to say the students. I'm going to say we as the
Do
students.
you get sufficient backing from the rest of the council of your student body, student executive, if you want to be militant?
If Joshua said let's protest tomorrow, I'm there.
You're
Of
not-
course,
you're
of
not the
course.
whole student body.
Of course, no, Chris. Why? Because of the inadequate communication. Subsequent to that, I mean, students representatives have a right to choose whether they want to go or not. They have different opinions and notions, whatever. So they are very much. There are many executive representatives who are ready and willing to be militant, and there are those who are conservative, who are reserved. So we respect both because we don't
need that
manipulate who's on the executive. We allow those
Zainab, where you
expressions
stand
to take
on
place.
that?
I
Militant.
usually take part in it. What we do, we have meetings, we come, we discuss, and we see where the majority lies. And once I analyze the situation,
Making
I make my
sense.
decisions based on that.
About your revolution.
Yes.
But you see, the thing is, Chris,
It's not a one.
historically, the students of the University of Guyana have yearned for a good leadership. Separate from that, there's a fear of victimization every time they speak out, and so it's not just with whether they're relatively middle
You can't
class.
victimize an entire student population, you know.
You have
Not an entire student. You can select individuals.
you can I would know this.
The entire student
No, I
population.
would know that you could select individuals.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, definitely. You know, when we protested, there was a sign I held up that they can't arrest us all when we had the big crowd and stuff like that. But students, I get the sense that they because we've had to quell a few student protests recently. Students are now ready again to say petition, lockdown, shut down,
down.
protest, because
Black
they've
flag.
seen that their student body is willing to represent them in
extra
that regard. So the tide is changing in that regard, Chris.
Let's spend the next few minutes on the position of youths generally in our society. Do you think, historically, youths, which make up a significant part of the population, and we are always told is the future of the country, do you think they have sufficient say in the society?
No, I do not believe they do.
I would say that currently, no. But that it's a work in improvement. All right? I would say that essentially youth have, over years have been somewhat oppressed and have felt that they cannot speak out because of fear of victimization, because of different other factors. But I believe now that the culture of our activism is changing, and as such, youths are demanding more. Activism has moved now from just being on the streets.
Give me a few examples.
Activism now has moved from
Give me
just
a few
being on the
examples.
streets, but also via Facebook.
Give me a few examples.
A few examples
You-
of
Youths have been demanding more, and they're getting more.
use of yes.
What have they been
Well-
demanding that they got?
For one example, I would say that it is through the youth activism that we would have had one of the greatest, I would say, changes that have existed in this country. Through youth activism.
I'm talking. Well, if you want to take that, let's take since that date. What have youths been asking for that they've got? Do you think youths are sufficiently represented at the various levers of power
No,
in our
Chris.
society?
No, fundamentally no. Two things though. I don't want to encourage young people to seek handouts or just to go and say, oh, I'm young, I need to be in a position. You must earn your stripes. All right. So young people need to be more proactive in the various disciplines. They need to be able to show that they can be responsible in these things. Don't expect handouts. Separate to that though, I still do not see enough young people being
You have a
involved.
cabinet that average age well over 60. Is that acceptable?
I don't find that to be acceptable in this day and age, Chris.
Your answer, sir?
No, I don't find it acceptable in this day and age.
You having a good laugh.
But I think, however, that the president has made it clear on many occasions, one, that his desire is to have youth qualified, to have youth play an important role in the development of the society, evident in his youth entrepreneurship schemes, and the manner in which he has approached the issue of youth unemployment and youth oppression.
Well,
But you see-
let's talk about youth unemployment. And I come back to University of Guyana. Have they done a study, and has the government, has the president asked for a study to be done of the youth unemployment in this country? If you don't know what the problem is, how do you fix it?
I wouldn't be able to say that yes, he has done or not. But I'm confident that this is on the agenda.
I try to be apolitical, Chris. I can't really endorse anything he says.
You're not accusing your brother of being political.
No, I am. He's definitely partisan. That's okay. All right. But then,
What about you, sister?
Neutral.
I'm also part of GNYC, National Youth Council. And definitely, since the election period, young people have gone too quiet. And I do believe
Have
that
young people been sidelined?
I won't be able to say I won't.
Have they
I
been
won't
brought-
use. I won't
okay.
use sideline just yet.
Let's bring it differently.
Uh-huh.
Have they been brought into the mainstream of the decision making?
I have noted many consultations that
I was
include
just
young
about to
people.
say that.
So there is an approach. Whether it's significant or quality, I won't be able to say just yet. But what
Is
I'm
it
saying,
producing? Have you seen discernible, measurable results?
I have not. It doesn't mean that it's not there. It doesn't mean that I probably have not seen it. What I can also say, though, Chris, is that my understanding is that young people, through the GNYC and discussions with young people, is that we're going to give a little bit of time. I think that time is almost up.
Yeah.
Before we say this, that. So there was a period, there was elections and everything happened and stuff like that. People had their plans and everything. Young people now are regrouping and activism will commence again. You can bet on that. Young people have tasted of the fruit of being active.
The presidential
and voicing.
advisor has made a commitment to ensuring that
Who's
we
the
have-
presidential advisor?
Mr. Aubrey Norton, that we have a national youth policy. And now this came out of a series of interactions and consultation with young people with the aim at ensuring that it's finally implemented. So I wouldn't necessarily want to say that, nothing is being done.
So tell me about that youth policy. What you know about it. What tangible is there in that policy
Well,
that you can take heart and say, look, we are now part of the mainstream of decision making and beneficiary.
Tackling the very issue of the involvement of youth is a policy which speaks to the percentage of youth on state boards, the percentage of youth that are represented in the National Assembly. So that's a part of the national youth policy.
What's the
What
average
is-
age? What's the average age of the people in the National Assembly?
Now,
On the government side?
No, the policy is in its final stage.
No, we know
Currently?
the policy can only be to what it is, what it is in substance.
Yeah, but it hasn't been.
What do
Activated
you
yet.
think? What do you think, Zainab, ought a proper youth policy ought to be?
To me, a youth policy should have like ways and laws to allow for youth to actually have some amount of power, not just 2 youths here out of 10, because at the end of the day, if 8 of you decide on one thing, the 2 youths have no power at all. The same thing was with our UG council rep. Our former UG council rep would have noted times that when she wants to have her opinion, no one would listen because she's just one small voice. We have to allow young people, we have to give them the chance to be able to have power, to actually have some amount of thing in the decision-making policies. Not just, okay, we have one youth here and the youth doesn't have no real power, no real strength.
What's your view? What kind of youth agenda?
If we are serious as a nation about the future, then we need to take seriously the training and involvement of young people now at the present. All right, it has to be a conscious effort. Young people, when we talk about young people in government, we immediately go to the recently elected Canadian Prime
Yeah.
Minister, among other things. And then I also asked a question before this about what's going on with youth parliament and stuff like that. Now, again, if we're serious about Guyana moving forward, then every stakeholder must be serious about education for young people and also involvement at the various stakeholders. We are looking at it from a university perspective, but you can be assured that the university is a microcosm of society, and therefore, once we address it here, we're very much working towards addressing it
It
beyond.
should be the cradle of your intellectual class as well. It should be the driving force.
It should be.
Not just a microcosm.
Not just a microcosm. It should be and that's why at the UGSS level we're pushing for improved representation by students at various boards and committees at this level, and we hope that can transcend to the broader society.
I wonder if you can answer me this question. Again, because I'm looking for evidence. We hear about all these consultations. Have these persons come to the University of Guyana and offered tangible support to the UGSS and the student body?
No.
As a
Not-
body?
Yes.
As I
Not-
recall, you just
No,
had a
not-
rep
not-
at the consultation. You just had a rep.
I think you need to
I'm
clarify your
talking-
question.
I'm talking about tangible support for your efforts and show empathize with the problems you face that you could spend 45 minutes giving me a litany of the issues you face. What tangible efforts have you seen from the newly elevated elected persons to show these persons truly understand our challenges?
I mean, the closest thing, Chris, could be the appointment of members of the council, but nothing directly to the student body as yet. Nothing as yet. We still hope
When
for
of a council vote?
the University of Ghana Council, the appointment of
Well, you're not calling a 69-year-old man like Christopher Ram an asset to the youth movement.
Why not? Why not?
Maybe
Because
young at heart.
you want to be able to identify with your people.
We do. But that doesn't make
People
you
who-
less of an asset.
I come back to, because I'd like to find out what kind of agenda we really need to have. And even if we were to take it just from at University of Ghana, what kind of youth agenda? Because and youth agenda at university probably means educational agenda as well. But you're saying we are being not starved, but we're not being provided with the resources we need. And I think if you were to ask lecturers, they have the same problems. I went to a washroom the other day and I thought, I ain't going back there. And this is an exclusive one.
Is that exclusive one?
Well,
for
just
lecturers.
for lecturers. So, what is it? What we need to do?
The
And as you
agenda-
know, as you know, Joshua, the new chancellor
Yes.
has said he certainly wants to take this to a different level.
Yes.
Is the UGSS sitting down, because he talks about January?
Yes.
Is it sitting down and say, look, this is the agenda we want to see. This is the blueprint we would want to insist on to take the university forward.
That is a plan in progress because now is the exam period, but it's definitely on our agenda to have that on the agenda of the blueprint.
It's on the agenda to have it on the agenda.
Yeah. But Chris, in closing, again, I keep re-emphasizing that at minimum, at this point in time, especially with the 50th anniversary coming up, Chris, next year, for Guyana, I hope that by that time, we can see some real radical changes at the University of Guyana for our 50th anniversary. I hope when the 50th anniversary time comes, we don't see a haphazard university that still has poor facilities. I think the government needs to take seriously within view of the concerns of the University of Guyana. I think we're gonna need a bailout very soon, Chris, at least for the next couple of years. Serious input, serious financial input. But I don't want to suggest this input be made without acknowledging that students need to be more involved in the decision-making process. I can't do that.
Well, you've had the last word, Joshua Griffith, President of the University of Ghana Student Society, ably supported by Ms. Zinab Karim and Mr. Brian Smith. It surely was a pleasure having you on Plain Talk. I take it you've been able to articulate your positions. And I want to say thank you to the operators. Thank you, viewers, and good night. We'll see you next week as we move inexorably into a holiday period. See you next week.